Hello and welcome to Channel Duello. It is really a good time to be playing Gwent right now. Why? Because CD Projekt Red just dropped a bunch of new cards for us to play with, and it's not just that, they also released a roadmap, and the roadmap looks really interesting. We'll be seeing frequent updates, and a lot of new cards are on the way. In this video I'll be talking about the new card drop as of yesterday, and there have been 12 new cards released. They all look familiar. They used to be leader abilities or something like that. Actually, I wasn't playing Gwent when these cards existed, so I can't really comment on that, but I'm gonna talk about the new version of these cards and trying to analyze them. But before doing that, I'd like to talk about the future of Gwent. They released a roadmap, and the roadmap is looks kind of interesting and exciting, to be honest with you. It is different from what other card games are doing, obviously, because normally, like for every 3 or 4 months or something like that, card games release new expansion sets, and with each expansion set we are introduced to new cards. But Gwent decided to do something different. They are also planning expansion sets, but they'll be dividing the content into 3 parts. So it looks like they'll be releasing new cards for every 2 months. And this will really keep the meta fresh, and we always try to build new decks after each card is released. It will be interesting, and I'm hopeful about that. At the same time, people kind of like, opening packs or kegs in Gwent. So when they do something like this, we're not going to be seeing like Iron Judgment packs or Way of the Witcher packs. And from my understanding, it's going to be like that. So instead, we'll be crafting the cards with our scraps that we collected. It is not exciting. I mean, people always like to open kegs and hope they get a good card out of them. So I don't know. Time will tell which one is better, which one is the better approach. But it looks like in 2021, this is the way they'll apply. Maybe they'll return to the old ways for the next year. Anyway, let's talk about the new cards. There are 2 legendary cards from each faction. We have no new neutral cards, and I'll be talking about each of them along with the card tweaks. I mean, there are some archetypes, or let's say enhanced archetypes. They're trying to make some of the themes stronger with these cards, and to do that they need to support them. So there have been some card changes, so I'm going to talk about them as well. Let's start with monsters, and thanks to Gwent 1 website, we can compare the old version, new version, and see everything. They're really doing a good job, so gotta give credit to them. The monsters legendary cards are vampires, and they are trying to strengthen the vampire archetype. I mean, everyone likes vampires. They're kind of cool creatures. In every story, in every game, they're always interesting. Gwent is no different, and Witcher World is no different. And people like to play with vampires, but they are not really strong, because they didn't have support cards. I mean, we only have Oriana, and we didn't have any strong cards to support her. Now we have. We're going to be seeing Unseen Elder and Detlef van der Eretain cards in the new meta. Detlef has other cards as well, but yeah, the Detlef that we were using was only designed for Death Wish type of decks, Overwhelming Hunger decks. But this one is truly a vampire. Let's start with Unseen Elder. When Unseen Elder comes into play, the deploy ability is give bleeding 4 to an enemy unit. And he is 5 strength with 12 provision, so you give 4 bleeding, which makes a potential 9 points. And then at the end of your turn, give bleeding 2 to a random enemy unit without bleeding. So if there is another unit that has not bleeding on it, it's going to give 2 more. And if Elder is untouched, he's gonna give bleeding to all other creatures. And if you have units that support the bleeding mechanic, you're gonna get a lot of value from this card. It's obvious, but he needs to be answered as long as the opponent has lots of units. So they're going to be bothered by the existence of Unseen Elder. And there is this devotion ability, which is intriguing. Bleeding on enemy units also triggers at the end of your turn. So this is a totally new thing. As you all know, bleeding applies at the end of your opponent's turn. So when this happens at the end of your turn, you gain more points. So the value is increased a lot. So if you're planning to play Unseen Elder, you should definitely go for Devotion and do not include neutral cards in your deck. I like the Devotion approach, by the way, and I hope they'll keep releasing cards with Devotion tag on them, because we don't want to see some of the, let's say, unhealthy neutral cards like the Geralt cards, and maybe we don't want to see Heatwave in every non-Devotion deck. So supporting Devotion is a good idea. But it's obvious that you need to play this card with a vampire theme, or maybe lots of bleeding. But Detlef definitely needs to be in the vampire deck, and Detlef spawns Blood Moon on an enemy row for 1 turn when he is deployed, and increase duration by 1 for every adjacent vampire. So there needs to be several vampires next to him to get more value from Blood Moon. So Blood Moon is already a pretty good weather effect, row effect, but you don't spawn Ekimaras like the organic card that you play. And but it is possible to spawn Ekimaras. How do you do that? When you damage an enemy unit with bleeding 1/1, bleeding by 1, you spawn an Ekimara on this row if you manage to hit Death Blow. So that unit was gonna die anyway, because if there will be bleeding on it, and if he bleeds for 1, if he is going to die, it's gonna die anyway. But you kill him with Detlef, and you get an opportunity to spawn an Ekimara on this row. And this is an order ability with only cooldown 1. So this is a really powerful engine. If you can somehow, get death blows on the units that are bleeding, you can get a lot of value. So combining Detlef and Unseen Elder with Oriana seems like a good idea, and we are already seeing examples of it on the ladder. And vampires are fun to play. So I think this is a really good approach by CD Projekt Red, supporting an archetype that people like to play, and it is not unfun to play against vampires, unlike some other archetypes. So I'm totally behind this idea or approach. And there are also some other vampire changes. Protoflutter used to be a pretty good card, but now the card was going to be supporting bleeding. It's not going to damage and drain immediately. Instead, it's going to give bleeding 3 and boost self by the amount of bleeding on that unit. So to get more value out of this card, you need to apply bleeding with some other cards that your deck should already be designed to play like that. So suppose that unit has 3 bleeding already. If you apply 3 more, Protoflutter will be boosted by 6, and that gets a lot of value, obviously. But still, I would prefer the old version. But at the same time, they want you to play bleeding the bleeding ability, so that's why he needs to be compatible with that. Alp was already applying bleeding, the old version. Now she is going to be have an order ability. So deploy, give bleeding 3, which has been reduced, let's say, with 1 turn, and order, give an enemy unit bleeding 3. So there is a potential that you can get 3 power, 3 bleeding, and 3 another bleeding. So 9 points out of a 5 provision card, but it's really an optimistic approach here. So the creature could die before the bleeding is completed, or you may not find the target, or there is not enough turns to get the value. Still, if you're playing vampire and bleed theme, Alp is a perfect match. The downside is provisions is 5, and there could be some clogging in 5 provision slots, so you may not find a place. Like, I mean, do you want to remove larvas to use Alp? I'm not sure. Flutter, this is an interesting change. Flutter used to destroy an allied unit and gain vitality for 4 turns on deployability. This wasn't a good card. Now it's better, but this is a strange design. Whenever an enemy unit receives bleeding, well, the deck you need to build will be, totally on the bleeding theme, so there will be plenty of bleeding. Flutter will gain vitality with the same duration, and this unit could turn into something like 12 or 13 vitality on it, but there aren't enough turns to get that value, and this is not a hammer, right? Like, you're not gonna get 2 power from vitality. Still, this is a 5 for 5, and you'll definitely get more value from Flutter. So I think this is a good bronze, and I would probably prefer Flutter over Alp. So that's it about vampires and monsters. I'm not going to talk about the other balance changes. They're kind of obvious and don't want to waste time on it. And let's move to Nilfgaard. Nilfgaard has really 2 cool legendary cards. They're not, strengthening or creating a new archetype with this, but they will support some existing decks. For example, Emir, and this legendary character is getting a pretty good card for himself. Deploy, draw a card, and move a card from your hand to the bottom of your deck. So this is already an hand manipulation, so you can get rid of a crap card from your deck, or maybe if you're stuck with a brick, you can get rid of it and send it to the bottom of your deck. So this is a good value, and since this guy is 7 power, you're not losing much value, but you still need some juice. What are the other abilities? Whenever your opponent plays a unit, give it spying. So every time a unit is played on the opposite side, it's gonna get spying. So there are some obviously cards like Thirsty Dame and that Aristocrats, I guess. Whenever an enemy unit gains spying or status, you're gonna get value, so that supports that. And if you're playing Devotion, which you should if you're playing this card, at the end of your turn, seize a random 1 power spying unit. Well, there needs to be a 1 power spying unit, obviously, but if you're playing some damage cards along with Emir, you can reduce the power to 1 and capture a unit like Visigoda, for example. But other than that, when you use your Duchess Informant or other 1 power bronze spying units, you're gonna get them back. Why? Because you're seizing a random 1 power spying unit. So I think this is a really good value card, and a deck with Masquerade Ball and spying should really try to find a room for Emir. And he is an aristocrat, so that triggers Masquerade Ball as well. What about Anna Henrietta? She could be even better than Emir. Why? The ability is really unique and interesting. Deploy, replace your leader ability with a base copy of your opponent's leader ability. So you're switching leaders. But you can deplete your leader ability and then use the opponent's as well. So there is no thing like you're just switching. Why don't you use your ability and then use opponent's ability too? So with 9 provision, 3 power, I think this is a pretty good ability. I'm pretty sure you're gonna get more than 6 points value with opponent's leader, and you're not locking the opponent's ability or anything like that. And I think this could really work well with assimilate engines. Probably you'll be playing from your opponent's factions units or something like that. It really depends on what your opponent's playing, actually. Some leader abilities are pretty cool to steal, some are not, obviously, but you're still gonna get value. Like if your opponent's playing Inspired Zeal, well, actually that has to be Northern Realms, I guess. Let's say the ability is like, for every 2 turns you're getting 1 charge or something like that. You can use them. But for Syndicate, I don't think this card is pretty good, because you're not gonna need coins, right? Unless you plan to use plenty of opponent's units. So I think she is best suited for double cross leader ability. Anyhow, so the strength of this card really depends on the opponent you're facing, as a summary. And for Nilfgaard, well, there are some adjustments and tweaks and something like that, and these adjustments are not particularly talking about because they affect other decks. They are not related to new cards. Only Falsiri actually. This is an aristocrat, so she became an aristocrat, and her ability once again changed. She used to be different. There was artifact removal tagged with Falsiri. Now it's deploy boost all allied agents by 1. So if you're playing with Emir, there will be a lot of agents, and maybe you want to play Falsiri in the deck that you're using Emir. We'll see. Now let's talk about Northern Realms. Northern Realms 2 leader cards are supporting again boost ability, the boost archetype, but they are targeted for specific types of decks. For example, King Foltest is really suited for Commandos deck, and people are already using it, testing him out. Let's read the text. The first time a bronze unit on your side of the battlefield is boosted each turn, spawn a base copy of it at the bottom of your deck. Well, if you're playing Uprising or Shield Wall, leaders like that, and we have lots of bronze units that are going to be boosted either with units next to them or with let's say special cards. There are a lot of opportunities to boost them. So whenever they are boosted, a base copy will be spawned at the bottom of your deck. So what good will it do? Well, maybe there is a way that you can call them back when they are boosted, and Commandos is the best option, or the most obvious option here, because you recall your Commandos from your deck. So if you're somehow have King Foltest on the board and you're boosting the Commandos and keep producing copies of it, and then you're gonna call them back with Pavetta and so on, so you can get a huge combo out of it. The problem is with this type of deck, it is like a win more condition. I mean, if you're finding ways to do your combo, you're going to be winning anyway, probably. So you don't need maybe King Foltest. And when you add King Foltest, you need to remove a card, maybe a crucial card that could win the game, maybe a control option. So I'm not sure the addition of this card is making the Commandos deck stronger or not. Other than that, we could see some other combos, but probably they'll stay on the meme side of things. Like Erland could really go well together with this card, and maybe Archgriffin, since you're boosting units on your deck, they could benefit from that. But if you're playing an Archgriffin deck, you kind of need neutral cards. So to get more value from Foltest, you need to play Devotion. And getting back to Commandos deck, if you're playing a Commando deck with Devotion, you can't include cards like Oneiromancy and Heatwave, so that could really hurt the deck. I don't know, we'll see. Queen Meve, she is really a popular character, no doubt about that. If you played Thronebreaker, you should be more familiar with her, and you should definitely play that game. There's a great story associated with the game, even if you don't particularly like the game mechanics too much. It's really an interesting story. Anyway, so Queen Meve, what does she do? Well, there is a counter on her, so like a ticking clock. When it reaches 0, something good will happen. Well, the good thing is she boosts all ally units by 1 on the board, and that's a really huge effect, and you need to time it well though. And if an opponent locks her or removes her, so bye bye. But she's hard to remove. Gotta add to that 7 power and 2 armor. Not easy to do with damage cards. So locking her could be the best option, or doing something like the heat waving her maybe. But she's 10 provision, not 12 provision, so this is a good value. And if she's inspired, the counter is reduced by 1. So that could happen earlier than you expect, or before the opponent gets a chance to respond to her. She's a pretty good card. But at the same time, you need a lot of units on the board, and you need to be playing a swarm type of deck. And she needs to stay on the board obviously. In my opinion, the existing Witcher decks could use her. Well, there is the stamp provision slot. I mean, people are undecided what to use on that slot, or Prince Ansei and other Geralt cards are being preferred. Maybe you could go with Queen Mew and go all in with boost theme. I haven't tried it though. So both are pretty good, not really strong, and they're not crap. So both could be used in some decks. What about other changes in Northern Realms? Well, some changes, especially Scytheman's nerf, really affects the Witcher decks. I like to talk about the other two since they are kind of related to the cards that are being printed. Kedwin is Sergeant. The Zeal ability is removed. Instead, it's Formation. What does it mean? Well, you have more flexibility. You can play Sergeant on the range row and wait for the charges, and if you feel safe about it. And you can play it on melee row if you suspect that he'll die or be removed, and then use it like the previous version and boost them by one, boost 2 units by 1. In some certain decks, this could be a better option compared to Radovit's Royal Guards. But Royal Guards is still a better card overall. Smoke them out. This provision has been reduced from 5 to 4, and but it's not gonna spawn boosted volunteers immediately. You need to have a boosted unit on the board. So there is a small requirement before playing this. I think this is a good change. So that extra provision, could give us some design alternatives. So that's all I can say about Northern Realms. Let's move to the rest of the other half, the other factions. Scoietel. First of all, Scoietel. There are 2 legendary cards, and they're strengthening 2 different archetypes. Brewer Hook is for obviously dwarves. Well, CD Projekt is really making an effort to make dwarves once again playable. You can still play them, but don't expect to get a lot of wins. But Brewer could help you with that cause. What does he do? Well, the second ability is important. At the end of your turn, boost all dwarves with armor on this row by 1. So that he's kinda like Gazras and a raw boost effect. He needs to have armor on him, which is really easy to do with Mahakam Forge Leader ability, since he's gonna have armor by default, and the other dwarves will have armor on them as well. As long as they keep them, they're going to be boosted by 1. And there's this deployability, so you can add even more armor on Brewer Hook. Gain 1 armor for every dwarf in your hand. So this card needs to be played in the middle of the round, something like that. You don't want to play him too early because there won't be any dwarves on the row. You don't want to play him too late because you cannot put armor on him. It is kind of an interesting card. It's like Gerd from the Skellige Witcher cards. You don't want to play him too early or too late. So it is similar to that. And I think this card is pretty strong and definitely will help the Dwarven archetype. However, the armors do not add to your total points. That's the problem here actually with dwarves. Well, they are resilient, hard to be removed, having armor on them, but their total points could not be enough in certain matchups. So the problem still stays the same, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. So yay for dwarf lovers. Elden. Well, this is interesting because they also made some changes to existing traps. Well, if you haven't noticed, CD Projekt Red is trying to make some archetypes viable again. They already did it with bombs by first creating a card like Madoc and then buffing the Dimeterium bomb and other bombs. Now the bombs are playable, and they want the same thing for traps. And in order to do that, they needed to change some traps, because the traps are not really good, but they are better right now. Let's talk about the traps first, and then talk about the legendary card that supports them. And Serpent and Pitfall trap has been changed. Now they have Spring added to them, and this is really making them stronger. For Serpent trap, I mean, opponent needed to play a special card to get good value out of it. So in most of the times, if you're playing let's say a unit heavy deck against a unit heavy deck, this card was a brick. Now you have a flexibility here. You can spring the trap, I mean, click on it manually and destroy the enemy unit with the lowest power. Think it like Manticore. So with Imperial Manticore, you can destroy the lowest power unit, but if that unit is like a 7 or 8 power, you're getting a huge value from Serpent Trap. So it's similar to that. And Pitfall Trap is a slightly cheaper trap. Still, it's 6 provisions. So this didn't do much with 6 provisions, but we have a Spring option, randomly split 6 damage between all enemy units. So you may sometimes need to do that instead of waiting for the opponent to play a card with high provision costs. So I think these are good changes. And there is also another unit card that's gonna look for a trap. Well, he used to actually tutor for a trap, like play a bronze artifact from your graveyard. So traps are artifact cards, so he was already a tutor for that. And when you look at the new version, well, the power has been decreased by 1 and the provision has been increased by 3. So this looks like a nerf, right? However, you can create and play a trap card from your starting deck. So this is not, it's not saying a bronze trap. So gold traps like Serpent Trap and Pitfall Trap are included. Especially Serpent Trap could be really helpful, or Crushing Trap when you need it. He's gonna tutor for it. And if it wasn't great, just play a trap card from your starting deck, it would have been even better. Why? Because you are gonna thin out your deck and use the trap that you needed, use the trap at the time that you actually need it. But instead they wanted to use create words, so the trap still stays in the deck. So these are pretty good changes for traps, and they're definitely making them stronger and playable. And Elden is the ultimate card that you will benefit from traps. I think he used to be a leader with the same ability, and now it's a card. And he's an elf, which really helps with the elf synergy. Deploy, transform all your face-up traps into Elven Deadeyes. So you used your traps, but you're going to get even more value from it, because they're going to be turned into Elven Deadeyes with 3 power. And then you can play your Vernasil on melee row and get tremendous points. So Elden is really a good fit with elves and trap stacks, and especially great for Deadeye Ambush. And if you have Devotion, also transforms your other artifacts. Well, the only artifact that comes to mind is Feign Death, but I don't think it's worth it. You kind of need, neutral cards like Oneiromancy, Heatwave, or something, or things like that. I would rather play non-devotion if I'm playing a deck with traps. But I'm gonna criticize these changes associated with traps, because traps decks are uninteractive decks, just like the Precision Strike no unit deck or Madoc decks. You're keeping your unit size to minimum. You're using only 13 units, and some of these units are not even units, like Saber-Tooth Tiger, Madoc. You're thinning them out of your deck, and some of them are really not units. So you are kind of cheating. Maybe you only have 4 or 5 units that the opponent can interact, and it's really not fun to play against these types of decks. And some people can get angry, obviously, during playing a game, but if that anger turns into frustration, and then some players could think about quitting the game altogether, or just stop playing that day. You don't want your players to feel that way, in my opinion. well, some players obviously like traps, bombs, and other stuff, but you need to think about the future of the game. Well, these cards used to be meme cards, so I mean you couldn't get really competitive with these. So I want them to stay in the game, but I don't want them to be too powerful. If you do that, there will be a lot of sour faces, disappointed players, and I could even be one of them. So I'm not sure strengthening traps, bombs, and designing cards like Saber-Tooth Tiger. I don't think these decisions are, let's say, right step. I don't think this is a good approach. Well, depending on the feedback, players' feedback, they could always go back to the old ways. I'd rather, play a game with units interacting with each other and so on. It's much more fun. I mean, especially Skellige and Scoietel units, deploy damage to. I like these kinds of games, but everyone's taste is different. Okay, the next topic or faction is Skellige. We have two units. One of them and the cards that they changed is going to be reinforcing the pirates theme, pirate archetypes. Actually, that archetype didn't exist, and I'm sure people will try that out. The other one is a really solid addition to warrior decks, in my opinion, and this could be as well as broken and could need a hotfix. Ice Tursak, let's talk about him first. Well, he has veteran ability, so you preferably need to play him on round 3, so he will have 5 power then. Whenever you discard a Skellige unit during your turn, summon it from your graveyard to this row. This is pretty good. So the deploy ability, there's actually a discard mechanic. Draw a card and discard a card. So if you're discarding a card like Greatsword, Bear Witcher, I mean the units that have high base power, but when you play them, you're losing value. But if you summon them, they're gonna be on the board with their base power. So that's pretty good. But you need to have Bloodthirst too. So you gotta build a deck that damages a lot so that you can have Bloodthirst 2 when you play him. But the devotion ability, and by the way, this has counter too, so you can do it only twice. And since this is a deploy ability, the opponent does not have a chance to answer to him, so you can use the ability right away. But you can use it only one time, so you need to have another card, maybe a discard card or something, so that you can use the second counter. But let's read the devotion ability. Also works whenever a Skellige unit enters your graveyard during your turn. So if an opponent dies on the board during your turn, like dies from bleed, they will come back. But the most important thing is leader ability. Well, the leader ability for Skellige Blaze of Glory, you're selecting a unit from your deck and then putting it into graveyard, and those units are usually high-powered units like Utah, Skull. Those units are really good for leaders, and you hit opponent's unit with that ability. But with Ice Tursak, okay, you do that, but in addition to that, you put the unit on the board. So that's really powerful, and you can get enormous amounts of points with only one card. This is insane, and but the thing is, if the opponent is aware of your plans, they will try to force Ice Tursak, I mean, before round 3, so that you don't get much value, or you need to use your leader ability, before round 3. But still, this is a really powerful card, and since he's a warrior, you can tutor him out with your Blood Eagle card. I like the design, but I think there needs to be some tweak, like maybe the deployability could be order, something like that, so that the opponent can have a chance to try to kill him or something like that. He needs some adjustment, in my opinion. Let's move to the pirates. Kraken Crate is a pirate, another legendary character from Witcher World. And the description is kind of complicated. It's actually more complicated than it needs to be, because you need to read it twice or 3 times to properly understand what it's saying. Give 2 armor to 3 pirates or ships in your hands. So as you see, so you need to build a deck around pirates and ships together. That's nice, you know, in terms of lore and, you know, story. Well, so you need to have pirates and ships in your hand before playing Kraken Crate. So obviously this card can't be played as the last card. So he's kind of an engine. Why? Because when you play a pirate or ship next to Krok, damage the ship or pirate, but since that unit will have 2 armor on it, it's gonna soak some of the damage, and then damage the lowest power enemy unit by each other's power. And this is kinda confusing. What do you mean by each other's power? Well, it looks like they will, the other unit will kill itself, and your pirate will damage itself, but as you see, as I said before, the 2 armor will soak some of the damage. So that's what I understand, but I haven't tried it. I will try to build a pirate deck and, you know, test it on Gwent, but haven't done it already. This is really an interesting card, but there needs to be better pirates and I wouldn't say ships, because there are already good ships in the game. But let's look at some of the changes to strengthen this archetype. Well, this is a nerf actually, Morkwark Heart of Terror. They removed warrior tag, so that because you know, you can use Morkwark since he's a pirate with some pirate themes. That's why they thought pirates got stronger, so Morkwark got even stronger. So let's remove warrior from this ability. So we kind of retired him from being a warrior. Demon Smuggler, this bronze card, it's now completely different. 5 provision, 3 power, but if you play it next to a ship, he's gonna spawn a base copy of himself on the same row, and both copies will have order abilities. They will damage a unit by 1, so you can get a lot of value from Demon Smuggler. If you're playing a pirate theme deck, this is definitely a auto include card. Other than that, the card is useless, obviously. This is warrior related change, I don't want to talk about it. Demon Warship. Whenever you play a pirate, damage self and a random enemy unit by 1. Well, if you keep playing pirates, it means that, this warship is gonna kill itself. And that doesn't look great, but there is a Death Wish ability, which is really odd, since Death Wish is kinda associated with monsters. Death Wish, summon a random bronze pirate from your graveyard to this row. That's interesting. Randomness is not great, but still, even when the ship dies, you can get some value by resurrecting a pirate, and this needs to happen probably on 2nd round or 3rd round, and I'm not sure if it's worth it. Gotta test it out. Terror Crew Axe Wielder has become a pirate. He was always a pirate, but he's not a warrior anymore. I'm not sure if this was necessary, and it looks like the card is the same, so this is a nerf. So that's about it. I don't think the pirates have enough juice to be competitive, but people will obviously try to make good decks out of it, and I'm pretty sure it will be fun to play, no doubt about it. Now let's move to the final faction, which is Syndicate. Syndicate has 2 cool legendary cards, leaders, or you could say that. Cleaver. Cleaver is a dwarf and crown splitter, so I want to highlight that the crown splitter tech, because most of the things are associated with playing crown splitters. With 11 provision, the power is 1. What the hell, you can say. Well, that's not all though. Deploy, spawn, and play Shakedown. So when you play Shakedown, I have never used Shakedown, so when I saw this card, I looked up what Shakedown is. Well, it's giving you 3 coins and boost an allied unit by 3, so that's nice. So it's not gonna stay at 1 power, it's gonna go to 4. And increase this card's intimidate by 1 for every adjacent crown splitter. So it has intimidate, it's only by 1, but if you put it next to a crown splitter, it's gonna be 2. If there is another crown splitter on the other side, it's going to be Intimidate 3. So whenever you play a crime, this card will boost itself by 3. So that's insane. And with fee 4, and you will probably have money, enough money because you're playing Shakedown, you can spawn a Cleaver's Muscle on this row. So a Cleaver's Muscle is a crown splitter, so you're pretty much guaranteed to put 2 crown splitters next to Cleaver. And Cleaver has 2 armor, so he will be really hard to be removed. And you can put a really good lineup on your melee or range row, and keep attacking with crimes on your opponent's side of the board. So if you're playing a crime theme deck, let's say a Gord deck maybe as a finisher, Cleaver is an auto include, and I think this is a great addition, and I really like the design of this card. What about Horson Jr.? Horson Jr. is interesting, definitely, and has cool abilities with it, but I'm not sure which deck really is best suited for him. Maybe Blood Money or something like control type of deck, because this is not really a great fit for Crimes deck, unlike Cleaver. Let's read the description. Deploy damage a boosted enemy unit by 6. So the enemy has to be boosted. Unless you're playing against Skellige. I mean, most of the factions use boosted units. But let's say the enemy has a green health with 4. So you don't want to damage it by 6. But the description gives you an option. Gain a coin for every point of excess damage dealt. So you can get your money back. So it is kind of cool. And the other ability is fee 3, destroy an enemy unit with 3 power or less. That's also interesting. As long as you have money, enough coin, you can destroy enemy units with 3 power or less. Well, I mean, I said it's not good for crime, but when you're playing crime, you know, you'll damage a lot of units, so there could be units with less than 3 power, so maybe he could fit. Still, this is a really good value card. Also, if you're playing Devotion, he gains Insanity, which means that if you have 0 coin in your bank, you don't have to pay the 3 coin. Instead, Horson Jr. will damage himself to destroy the enemy unit instead of using coin. As I said, this is a really great value card with only 10 provision, so 5 power isn't that low, and but just not sure where to use them. And let's take a look at the changes in Syndicate. There are a lot of changes. Again, I don't want to talk about the other changes in other decks. I mean, Siggy was already being used, so Igor is a specific card to be used with specific combos, so they lowered the provision, and they modified Blindheim brother cards, trying to make self-poison somewhat playable, which I highly doubt. The biggest buff is Ludovicus Brudenbaum, and this card had a huge buff actually. So after 3 turns you gain 9 coins, but if you have Tribute 5, and especially if you're playing off the books leader ability, that's going to be reduced to 4, you gain 9 coins immediately. You know, your ship will be summoned, and after that you can distribute the coins and so on. So this is a really good card. So from being 2-star to maybe it jumped to being 4-star card. Horson's Freak Show provision has been lowered by 1, which is a really good change. 8 was a bit too much. They added a new thing to Rico, so it's not going to be only base power. And those are actually, general changes, not specific to crime cards. But Tunnel Drill is about Cleaver decks, so if you're playing Cleaver, maybe you should think about adding Tunnel Drill, because increase damage by 1 for each adjacent crown splitter. So it works similar to Cleaver. So if you're setting up a row with crown splitters, and there will be a lot of crown splitters, I mean that halfling safecracker and that dwarf with intimidate, they're all crown splitters. So as long as you have them on board, you're gonna get lot value. So what does this do? Normally it's 1 coin, 2 coin, 1 damage. So compared to Horson Freak Show, it's weaker. But if there are crown splitters next to it, this could be like 2 coin per 3 damage, and this is a great value, as long as you have enough coins, obviously. And Coursed Blacksmith, small change, profit 2 right now. Stolen Mutagens, the Salamandra requirement has been reduced by 1. Beggar is getting a big buff. They're going to be producing even more coins if you can somehow do the bonded thing. The changes to Apothecary and Naturalists are not important, in my opinion, not worth talking about. Dip in the Pontar, this card could be used in crime decks. Profit 3, damage enemy unit by 3. It used to be 5 provision, now it's 4. I'm pretty sure people will test it out. Shakedown, not sure if you want to put this card in your main deck, but with Cleaver, obviously, this is pretty good. Tax Collector could be playable as well. This used to be an engine, and when you put it on range draw every allied turn and gains 1 coin, but it was 5 provision, now it's 4. I mean, maybe you can use Portal to call them out, and 1 provision is 1 provision. So as you see, I mean, there are a lot of provision reductions all over the board, so these reductions could end up making Syndicate stronger. I wholeheartedly agree with what they're doing with Syndicate. These changes are really good, and but you know, self-poison mechanic will not just work out. I mean, I wouldn't bother you know, trying to fix it. Only Roland is not Roland, the other brother. This Gellert is pretty good because unless your opponent is playing poisons, you know, you can self-poison and get boosts from it. So even if you're not playing self-poison theme, this card could be useful, and this change could really help you, especially earlier in the rounds. Okay, so that's about it. I hope you like my analysis and criticism. My mother language is obviously not English, so I'm trying to do my best here, and I hope I'm not embarrassing myself. And thank you for your interest in my channel. I made a similar video in Turkish, so my Turkish speaking viewers probably watched that and skipping this. So whoever is watching this, I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and if you liked it, please don't forget to hit the like button, and if you didn't subscribe to my channel, please do so. I will keep producing more content, and we will see more decks this week, because everyone is testing new decks, and I am doing that, so I'll be sharing some of them with you guys on channel Duello. Bye bye.